the McLaren MP4 Quarters is considered one of the most successful racing cars in the history of Formula 1. Having won 15 out of 16 races in the 88 season, it was this car that allowed us to see the most colorful moments of the confrontation between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. And although the experienced Frenchman and the young Brazilian had fought on the track before, however, they had to fight among themselves for the victory in championship and even as a part of the same team for the first time. It's all the more surprising that the team's car was created in a short time and there were no ingenious discoveries in its design. I propose to plunge into the racing atmosphere of 1988. After 3 seasons in the Lotus team, the Brazilian Ayrton Senna joined the McLaren team as a partner to the already 2-time champion Alain Prost. And he comes not just because the team wanted it that way, but on the advice of Alain himself.
Take the youngest, take the one for the future, take Ayrton. And they all look at me. I said, why do you want to take Ayrton? I said, for the interest of the team, take Ayrton.
The previous championship title in '87 was won by Nelson Piquet in Williams Honda, but in '88, after the announcement of the future cancellation of turbo engines, Williams switched to naturally aspirated jet engines, which ended up being extremely unreliable. But the team of Ron Dennis lures Honda to them, and in the last year of the turbo era they install a Japanese-made turbo engine that is slightly limited by FIA rules. Success is a very delicate matter. There is no exact recipe that is guaranteed to make you the strongest. But the general rule is that the easiest way to get ahead of your opponent is to outperform him in all components. But in Formula 1 there are such an incredible amount of these components that it is almost impossible to be the best in all. After all, for this you need to at least bring together the 2 most talented racers, the best designers, a powerful and reliable engine, and also add an effective control structure to this. 35 years ago, the head of McLaren, Ron Dennis, managed to create a similar dream team, which inflicted a complete and unconditional defeat on the rivals. The impetuous Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, the amazing Honda turbo engines, and, of course, the incredible MP4 Quarters made their contribution to the final result. This is not to say that fantastic dominance arose out of the blue. In the mid-80s, McLaren was one of the leaders of Formula 1, and when, just before the start of the 1988 season, Dennis signed contract with Honda, many began to call the team the main favorite. To get acquainted with Japanese engine, one of the MP4 third chassis created for the 87 season under the Porsche engine was converted into a mule. It's known as MP4 third B and was actively driven in tests. But for the new season it was necessary to create a new car, and with this there were certain difficulties. 4 months before the first race, work on MP4 Quarter had not even started yet. In the truest sense of the word, there was not a single sketch on the design drawing boards. Incredibly, in such a tight schedule, the team managed not only to design the car on time, but also to make it a true masterpiece of technical thought. The chief designer of the car was Steve Nichols. McLaren decided that creating MP4 Quarters is better for someone who has been working for the team for a long time. Gordon Murray was already the technical director at the time, but he just moved from Brabham, taking the place of John Barnard, who was poached by Ferrari. At that time, Murray's signature approach is unmistakably guessed in the concept of the car. The South African designer sought to make the chassis more streamlined, making the body panels slim and the driver's landing more horizontal. We can say that in the MP4 Quarters, the creators managed to combine the best features of the old McLaren and the strengths of the squared Brabham created by Murray. At the same time, the designers had to solve several new problems. In the 1988 season, the regulation required that the driver's legs didn't protrude beyond the axis of the front wheels. Before, accidents often led to the fractures for this reason. and the fuel tank was reduced in size. The fundamental decision was a departure from V-shaped monocoque used by Barner. His 1986 car had cockpit sidewalls that flared upwards. Instead, the MP4 quarters placed them vertically, which not only gave a gain in aerodynamics, but also increased the rigidity of the chassis. Luckily, McLaren had its own autoclave to bake carbon fiber parts. At that time, few people could afford such an expensive pleasure, but the money spent gave flexibility in production. When developing their very first all-Kevlar monocoque aircraft, the MP4/1 in 1981, the team made extensive use of infrastructure of aviators from Hercules Aerospace. But by this period, they were already doing everything themselves, only purchasing raw materials. It's equally remarkable that McLaren approached the manufacture of carbon fiber parts differently than other teams. Everyone prepared forms which they filled with material, and in walking they immediately cut out the desired element and set it to the autoclave. This speeded up the process and made it possible to correct errors faster, and in addition for flat parts. The McLaren's approach made it possible to use special types of fibers that provided increased strength. In addition to MP4 quarters, the entire front of the monocoque up to the sides of the cockpit was baked in a single piece. It also added strength to the car and made the chassis more rigid. The design was evolved over the course of the season. The elements under the body panels are slightly different from each other in color. This means that they were made at different times. At the same time, it cannot be said that there were some incredible technical solution in design of MP4 quarters that would have been a revelation. No, it was a car that absorbed all the latest developments and had no weaknesses. Besides, it looks unusual these days, but in 1988 it was common practice to prepare several fundamentally different chassis configurations for the season. You can even say that in terms of aerodynamics, these were independent cars that had certain similarities in mechanical components. Each was used on their respective tracks. McLaren had 3 such versions. The contract with Honda was largely made possible by Ayrton Senna. Despite the abundance of talent in peloton, the Japanese have always highlighted the future three-time champion. The 1.5-liter turbo engine of the RA168E model was also being significantly improved for the new season. In an effort to improve the chances of teams using atmospheric engines, the FIA reduced the maximum boost pressure from 4 to 2.5 atmospheres. This led to a drop in power about 300 horses to 700 horses. This in itself increased efficiency and reliability, but Japanese miners pay special attention to these indicators, and in terms of the number of failures, Honda was simply exemplary at that time. Of course, these days such a number of breakdowns would look shameful. To better cope with the new condition, Honda engineers worked hard with shell chemists during the winter. The result was a fuel with exotic additives, the propensity of detonation of which was noticeably lower than both of previous versions of Shell gasoline and competitors' products. The resulting cocktail significantly improved the performance of the motor, making it more torquey. This made it much easier for the drivers to control the car while maintaining the necessary power gap from the aspirated engines. According to the rules, cars with naturally aspirated engines could weigh less and take more fuel on board. Another McLaren acquisition was Titlan's clutch kits. They first appeared on Lotus a year earlier, and their distinctive feature was a small size, which was achieved through a number of successful solutions in the areas of layout and heat dissipation. The common clutch, combined with unusually low crankshaft, made the engine lower than that of competitors. This simultaneously shifted the center of gravity lower, which had a beneficial effect on handling, and made it possible to reduce the height of the car as a whole, and made it more aerodynamically efficient. The championship of 1988 season consists of 16 stages. The victory in the race brought the winner 9 points. Then the points were received by the first 6 drivers at the finish line. But only the best 11 results from 16 races went into overall standings for the participants during the season. This feature of the regulation of those years at the end of championship will be decisive. At the very first Grand Prix of 1988, at home in Brazil, Ayrton Senna took pole position while Prost qualified third behind Nigel Mansell and the Williams. However, on the warm-up lap the Brazilian finds himself unable to change gears, after which he will change to a spare car and start the race from the pit lane. Alain Prost is ahead of Mansell by the first corner and starts to break away. Nigel also passes Berger in a Ferrari, and then the two Williams of Mansell and Patrese retire altogether due to engine problems. Senna gradually overtakes the entire peloton, but in the middle of the race, after Berger's pit stop, having already reached second place, he receives a black flag and disqualification for changing cars before the start. Prost wins the first race of the season, Berger second, Nelson Piquet third. At the second stage in Imola, Senna will be 7/10 ahead of Prost in qualifying, and everyone else will be more than 3 seconds behind. At the start, Senna keeps the position, but Prost falls to the 6th position. Alain gradually wins back and, after overtaking Piquet, becomes the second. Nelson won't be able to hold back Nigel Mansell, who was breaking through from the 11th position. However, the Brit is again let down by Judd's engine. As a result, Piquet reaches the podium and Ayrton Senna wins his first victory of the season. In Monaco, the Brazilian will simply destroy everyone in qualifying, showing a time of almost a second and a half ahead of Prost, and more than 2.5 seconds ahead of Ferrari drivers Berger and Alboreto. Ayrton's speed through the narrow streets of the Principality was simply fantastic. From the very beginning, Senna goes ahead, but Prost will give way at the start to Berger. In the race, Alboreto attacks and knows out Mansell, and Felipe Alliot unsuccessfully gives way to Riccardo Patrese. Prost will be able to get ahead of Berger and get into second position. But Senna, only 12 laps short of the finish line, will make a mistake and crash into a wall in the Portier corner. At that time, the team asks him to slow down. But by trying to do so, the Brazilian will lose his concentration. As a result, the victory goes to Prost, and Senna will be angry with himself that day and will remember this mistake for a long time. Ayrton went home straight from the track, making the team nervous, but later, after considering everything that happened, Senna would apologize to the team. Stage in Mexico was the 4th in the championship calendar. In qualifying, Felipe Alliot, after a mistake at the exit of Peraltada corner, crashes the Larus team car on a concrete barrier, fortunately without consequences for the driver. Senna will once again show the best time and starts the race from pole position. However, already at the start, Prost leaves the place better, and Piquet also bypasses Ayrton, although not for long. Senna quickly regains second position, but he won't be able to catch up with Prost. Berger streamed past Nelson and ended up on the podium, while the two Lotuses Piquet and Nakajima won't reach the finish line. With Prost's victory, his lead over Senna in the individual competition will reach its highest point this season. In Canada, Ayrton won a 5th consecutive pole position, beating the previous record by 2.5 seconds. But once again, Prost starts better and leads the race. However, Senna will follow closely behind Alain and will be able to get around him at the moment of overtaking Circular. Behind them, Berger will retire due to the problem with the car. Later, the same fate will await his partner Alboreto and two Williams drivers Patrese and Mansell. Senna wins, Prost is second, and Benetton's Thierry Boutsen is third on the podium, leaving behind Nelson Piquet. On the city track in Detroit, Senna has always looked good, winning twice here as part of the Lotus team. Pole position is again taken by Ayrton. Prost will lose in qualifying to him and two Ferraris, but in the race he will quickly overtake Berger and Alboreto, who will again fail. Due to the large number of failures, only 8 cars reached the finish line. Thanks to this, Pierluigi Martini finishing 6th will earn the only point for Minardi team this season. Senna wins and closes the gaps in the championship to 12 points. At home in France, Alain Prost wins the qualification against Senna. Having retained position at the start, Ayrton in the race itself in an attempt to catch up with Alain changed into fresh tires. But Prost will respond in kind, just stopping by for a pit stop. Senna experienced problems with the gearbox at the end, will give way to Prost for more than half a minute. Behind, Alboreto will take advantage of his partner's mistake and come out in 3rd place. Prost wins and again wins 3 points from Ayrton. But in the next 4 races of the season, Ayrton will deal a serious blow to Prost's position in driver's standings. The 8th stage at the high-speed Silverstone will be marked by the first line on the starting grid of Ferrari drivers Berger and Alboreto. Senna and Prost, who didn't make it into a qualifying setup, started behind Ferrari. However, rain was waiting for the drivers in the race. Senna, the rain man, overtakes Alboreto, but Prost drops to 11th position and complains about terrible handling after the race. Berger and Senna overtake Prost, who continues to lose ground, already on the circle. And at this moment, Alain unwittingly slowed down the leader of the race, gave Ayrton the opportunity to attack and lead the race. Prost will eventually give up the fight and retire from the race. Closer to the finish line, the track will dry out, and the leaders will face the need to save fuel. Rolling behind Mansell will bypass everyone except Senna, who won the race and immediately won back 9 points from Prost, and Berger rose to the finish line already without fuel in 9th position. The next stage in Hockenheim was rainy again. Senna from pole position is the first to go into the race, and Prost will lose 2 positions to Berger and Magnini. Defending champion Nelson Piquet, who started the race on slicks, crashed into the tire fence on the first lap and ended the race. Philippe Alliot, also running on slicks, unsuccessfully misses the leading Senna. Prost gradually catches up with Magnini and then Berger. Ayrton wins in Germany, reducing the distance in the individual classification to 3 points. In the race of the Hungarian stage, Senna and Mansell start from the first line. Prost, who started the race only 7th, misses 2 more positions at start. Nigel, closely chasing Ayrton, catches the curb and makes a spectacular turn, but Prost will end up with a better pace. In race condition and by the middle of the distance, he already reached the 2nd position. Senna, losing more time on circle, lets Prost in, who even managed to carry out an attack, but the Brazilians still remain ahead and, in the end, win. After the stage in Hungary, in the individual competition, points are equal. However, Senna already has 2 wins more than Prost, which at the end of the stage will be decisive. The race at Spa will be another triumph for Brazilian McLaren driver. Having won the qualification, Senna will give way to Prost in the first turn. But then, starting his attack in the red water on the straight camel, Ayrton will regain his first position. Ivan Capelli in the March car will have a solid race, finishing in 5th place. After the disqualification of Benetton drivers Boutsen and Magnini for using illegal fuel, Capelli will become the 3rd at all. Senna wins at Spa and leads the individual standings. Before the stage in Italy, only McLaren drivers won the championship, but the race in Monza will be an exception and will be marked by the triumph of Ferrari team. And although Senna and Prost again became the best in qualifying, the Honda engine fails Prost. Senna, who was in the lead of the entire race, just 2 laps to go and successfully overtakes Schlesser's Williams and, after contact with him, drops out of the race. As a result, to the general joy of the local stands, Berger and Alboreto bring the winning double. Aero's team driver Eddie Cheever finished 3rd. In Estoril, Portugal, Alain Prost is on pole position. Senna will initially impose a fight on the Frenchman, but then his car will lose momentum. Van Capelli bypasses Ayrton, and then Berger will do the same. After that, the Austrian in pursuit of Capelli will fly over the track, and Senna will face Mansell, get a puncture and go to the pits to change tires, but for Nigel the race will be over. Prost first, Capelli second, Boutsen third. Senna finishes sixth and again concedes the championship lead. The Spanish Grand Prix at the Jerez circuit will start Senna from pole position, but will enter the first and only third, passing Prost and Mansell. Having beaten off a further attack attempt, Mansell leaves after Prost, and Senna, due to problems with the fuel sensor, is also inferior to Capelli, although the Italian engine fails a little later. Fresh tires here gave an obvious advantage, so Nannini, having changed tires earlier, would bypass Senna. Williams will try to outplay Prost, but there will be a hitch at Mansell's pit stop, and Prost, having made his pit stop a little later, stays ahead. Prost wins, but Senna finished fourth. However, in the individual competition, the distance between the drivers of the McLaren team hasn't changed in any way. Prost, having received 9 points for the victory, scores only 3 points in return for one of his second places, while Senna scores a full 3 points for 4th place. The limit of 11 scoring races was exhausted by both, but Prost by this point had 6 wins and 6 second places, while Senna had 1 win more, 2 second places and 2 results that could be significantly improved. At the end of the season, Prost needed only wins that would bring an extra 3 points. Second place for him was tantamount to descent. In the 2 remaining Grand Prix, Alain could get a maximum of 6 points, while Senna could earn 14. At the penultimate stage in Japan, the 13th pole of the season will take Senna. Prost will give him only 3 tenths in time. At the start, at the most crucial moment, Ayrton starts off in the 3rd gear and stalls, but a slight slope on the starting line allows him to start the car. From the 1st place, the Brazilian rolls back to the 14th. But returning to the race, Ayrton wins back as many as 10 positions in 4 laps. In front, Ivan Capelli began to catch up with Prost, who had problems with the gearbox. However, Capelli won't have time to create a sensation and will retire from the race. The drizzle only helps Senna, who is rapidly catching up with Prost. The Frenchman will be momentarily blocked by De Cesaris, who is lagging behind, and Ayrton, taking advantage of the moment, fires Prost and wins. The 8th victory of the season allowed Senna not only to lead the individual standings, but also to secure the title of the champion. And at the age of 28, Senna wins the Formula 1 championship for the first time. The final race in Adelaide couldn't change anything. Alain in any case couldn't earn more than the 3 points in it. Senna starts from pole position, but Prost passes him at the start. Behind them, Berger will create a small miracle. First overtook Ayrton, and then, leading in the race, Alain. But overtaking Circle, the Austrian will hurry up and collide with Ligier. Prost wins, Senna second, Piquet third. 2 former champions and 1 newly minted finish the season together on the same podium. Next year, the confrontation between Senna and Prost will continue with renewed vigor, and the past season will remain in the history of Formula 1 as the year of the incredible triumph of McLaren team in its legendary car. If we recall already more modern times, then Lewis Hamilton was given the chance to drive the famous McLaren MP4 quarters.